Hey there, Griff Hamlin here from Blues Guitar Unleashed. Welcome and thanks for joining me. In today's video, I want to go over just 3 very simple licks that come from good old box 1, right? It's the pattern that so many blues soloists know, and it tends to be one of the first patterns that we ever learn. But at the same time, it's unusual, or it's not unusual, to have it just sort of sound like a scale, right? A lot of people will start to play it, and it just sort of goes up and down. And there's really 2 problems with that. One, of course, it just sounds like a scale. It doesn't have any soul, doesn't really have any feel. The other thing is there's no phrasing, right? It never takes a breath, which again gives it sort of no soul and no feel. So I've got 3 simple licks. If you're a total beginner, you shouldn't have any trouble playing these. These are moves that your fingers need to be able to make. What's really important about these is that they're all situated so that there is some space before and after. Okay, so they're going to sort of naturally give you phrasing. Okay, and that's really how phrasing comes about. It's just leaving some space. So let's look at the very first lick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Now, 2 things. I'm playing this in a swing feel. It's not notated that way because you could just as easily play it in a straight feel. In a straight feel, it'd be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. In the swing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And I would encourage you to get comfortable playing it both ways. But blues, we tend to use the swing feel a lot, so that's what I'm going with. Now we're going to start with the 8th fret on the 2nd string. Now, if you don't already know box 1, it's in a lot of other videos I've done, so I'm not going to go over it here, but make sure that you're comfortable playing the pattern. I think that kind of goes without saying, but just in case, make sure you know that. So we're going to bend up the 8th fret on the 2nd string, that G. Now, you can do that with your pinky, or you can do it with your 3rd finger, whatever's more comfortable for you. You're almost guaranteed to need a helper finger or 2. If I use my 3rd finger, my middle finger helps. If I use my pinky, both my 2nd and 3rd fingers help. But what's cool about this lick is that where you need to get that note to is the next note you're going to strike. So by the time your bend is done, it should be the same as the next note you strike. And from there, we're going to kind of walk down through the pattern. So that's A, G, E, the 8th and 5th frets of the 2nd string, D and C, the 7th and 5th frets of the 3rd string. Okay, now the way we'll count it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And now when it's over, don't let it hang out. Don't just let it sit there for a while and die of natural causes. That note is supposed to last for about a beat. Slide it off. Slide it up. Choke it off. Give it a little vibrato, a little sugar on it, right? You can kind of, you see how I've got my hand, that little sort of fulcrum there? I can kind of shake it, even if you shake it up and down like that, even if it's just a little bit of bend. Something, give that note a little bit of sugar, sweeten it up. All right, if we go on and we take a look at the 2nd lick that I wrote out, it's going to start down here on this lower E, the 7th fret of the 5th string. And there's 2 things we're going to do that are interesting. We're going to start low. I don't generally start in the basement, as I like to call it, meaning the lower couple of strings. But sometimes this note can be really handy, particularly over the 5 chord, right? So we're going to start there with that low E at the 7th fret of the 5th string, grab the G and the A on the 5th and 7th frets of the 4th string, the C at the 5th fret of the 3rd string, back to the A and the G on the 4th string with 7th and 5th fret. It's going to start, notice on the and or the of 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you'll notice those two C's, the 2 5th fret on the 3rd string. I'm going to give them a little bit of sugar in the form of just a slight push. Notice it's not that. It's not a half step. It's really subtle. Okay, that's what I commonly call the blues squeeze, right? You're just kind of squeezing that note a little bit. Not enough to make it go out of tune noticeably. Not enough to push it up to the next half step. It's just a little bit of oomph that we give notes in the blues. It's just kind of a cool little thing that we do. I call it the blues squeeze. Right? And again, any place you can add a little vibrato. Not here, but notice I add a little right there. Also notice at the end, I kill it. It's short. It's not... You don't want to let it sit there while you think about what the next lick is. Leave the empty space. It's okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. The third lick that I wrote out, we're going to again start with a bend. This time we're going to hit it at the 8th fret of the top string, that's C. Bend it up to a D. Right? So notice I want to bend it up to make it match the note on the 10th fret. Return to the C. Now, what you got to do with your right hand here is you have to kill it. I have to kill that note and then strike it again. I don't want to hear... I call that a dying squid bend. You don't want that. Then we go down to the A, okay, the 5th fret on the 1st string. Now we're going to hit the G and the E, the 8th and the 5th fret of the 2nd string. Now we're going to get a little Albert King. So we're going to do the 7th fret on the D string, the 5th fret E on the 2nd string, and we're going to do this little roll. So you notice my first finger is going to it's going to hit that 5th fret E, and then it's going to roll down to the 5th fret C on the 3rd string. The finger roll is kind of a very Albert King thing to do. I see him do it a lot. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, in some instances, with all of these licks, you may hit it and you may hit the last note and you may think, I don't love that sound. The last note's very important in a lick because you want that last note to blend well with whatever chord is going on right now. So you might play that lick and you might hear that last note and go, oh, that sounds awkward for some reason. A situation where that might happen is, let's say for example, you hit that note over that chord and it kind of creates like a sharp 5. It's kind of a weird augmented sort of sound that would create. So in the event that you do that, the first thing you have to do to troubleshoot it is you have to look at what chord was the band playing at that time when you played that lick and it didn't sound the way you liked. If you look at the chord that the band was playing, that's your criteria, okay? All of these licks, there's no wrong notes. The coolest thing about the pentatonic scale is there's no wrong notes. There's no way you can hit a wrong note, okay? Everything is in key, and we use that term very, very loosely in the blues. But nonetheless, Everything is in key, okay? So none of the notes can be technically wrong. You will find that some are righter than others, is the way I like to say it. So let's say you play a lick and the last note just kind of isn't working for you. No problem. Move it to up one note in the scale or down one note in the scale, and it will lock in to the chord that you're playing. So again, for example, let's say I'm playing over an E chord, and I hit that note over that chord and I don't love it. I could take it and go to the next note on the scale, which is here, which is the D, and that fits perfectly within the scale, or down here to the A, which, because it's the root, will probably sound fine as well. So you can almost always fix a lick. If it doesn't sound perfect to you, just change the very last note. Just go up a note in the scale or down a note in the scale. One of them is going to line up and you're set. It's easy, okay? So keep that in mind. It's just a fun little thing you can do. So what I'm going to do is, just like I did on the way into this video, I'm just going to put on a little backing track. And I just played a 12-bar blues into my looper. And I encourage you to do the same. I know that a lot of times people want jam tracks and stuff like that. And there's definitely a time and a place for jam tracks. But if you can't play your own backing track, that's a problem. And you should solve it now. So you should very easily be able to play a blues in A before you get into doing all this lead stuff and everything. And I find that sometimes people can't. So I like to encourage you to do that. So if you have a looper, play it into that, play it into your iPhone and play it through a few passes and then hit it back. Whatever works for you. You just have to record it somehow simple that you can play it back and play over it. So what I'm going to do is play my little loop, and I'm going to just play those 3 licks just kind of as it goes by. Hope you'll join me as well and do the same. And as always, I'm Griff Hamlin from Blues Guitar Unleashed. Thanks for joining me, and I'll talk to you real soon. Take care.